My name is Josh Tapley. I am a co-leader on the Philadelphia Tableau user group. We've got a lot of content for you in store tonight. We haven't met in a while, so certainly appreciate you all tuning in tonight to come check out all that we have to present. We've got David, who's a featured Tableau public author, John and Ksenia, who are going to tell us about their student journeys. Taimoor is going to introduce us to some map layers, a new Tableau feature that is incredibly powerful. And then Laura and Jake are going to talk to us about cool tools that we could be using at the same time, like DBT. We should have some extra time at the end. So if you came with Tableau questions or you want to just talk about Tableau in any way, shape, or form, we're happy to hang around for a bit and talk through that. And I'll go ahead and kick it off. Just a quick reminder that we now have a number of co-leaders, which is fantastic. Super excited about that. BK, Gafar, Laura, Brian, Taimoor, and myself. But we always love to see more presenters. And if you're interested in joining the user group leadership team, please let me know. We'd love to have more people. All right, with that, I'll turn it over to you, David, if you want to take it away.
Perfect, will do. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Looks good.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is David Borczuk. I'm so happy to be presenting this presentation to you all. Thank you for all of the Philly Tableau user group organizers for giving me the opportunity to present this to you. If you saw the Fringe Fest presentation series this year, this is the one I did my presentation on. It's about this concept of deliberate design. And I will jump right into it. So my name is David. I am a Tableau Public featured author. I've been a Visit a Day recipient 5 times. And of course, I love Tableau and I love the Data Fam almost as much as I love chicken nuggets from McDonald's, as you can see. And honestly, I've never looked at something as longingly as that picture. So I love doing long form visualizations in Tableau, and I use a combination of a bunch of different softwares in order to accomplish this effect, mainly using Tableau for the visualization tools and then Figma for any outside design assistance that I need. Figma is a cloud-based design tool similar to Illustrator. So if you want to check it out, you can. It's free. So I highly encourage you to at least dabble in it if you haven't done it yet. So the purpose of this presentation is to it's not 100% about Tableau itself, but it's about the user experience surrounding a Tableau visualization. And the main thesis that I want you to take away from the entire visualization is that we're really busy people. We could be at work, we could be using our personal email, playing World of Warcraft and Call of Duty at the same time while browsing Tableau Public with Instagram on your left hand, swiping through all of the different content there. So it's hard for us as a person in this generation to give attention to a particular idea. Yet at the same time, we're consuming so much media, we have to kind of keep ourselves at this pace that we're kind of being bred to do in this generation. And Microsoft did a study in 2015. This is 2015, 6 years ago, when it's gotten a lot worse now, but our attention span's around 8 seconds. For me, I feel like my attention span's around 4 seconds. But if we compare that to a goldfish, the attention span of a goldfish is approximately 9 seconds. So congratulations, we have less of attention span than a fish. But this is really important in order to build content that attracts us in that period of time. In 2012, there was an article that talked about how 1 second could cost Amazon $1.6 billion in sales. Making sure that you're engineering a user experience in Amazon is super important for them to be effective at selling you a product and making sure that you're being recommended the correct products. And if you're not able to have your attention peaked in a certain amount of time throughout their whole user experience of the website, you might not buy the product, which they estimated it would cost them $1.6 billion. So keeping interest, especially in this current day where we're constantly being flooded by information, is really important. So how do we tell a story with the visualizations that we create in around 8 seconds? And I see it as sort of a continuum where you can focus on the user experience of the viz to maximize that process. But then you also want to kind of make it more complex so you stand out, at least in the Tableau public world where people like to see more complicated chart types or a more in-depth analysis, or at work, the more complex your viz is, the more information you can kind of pack into it. But it's not just about one or the other. You have to find this balance in between both of these ends in order to make sure that it's digestible and easily accessible to everyone. And so the way that I accomplish this is to have something called deliberate design, where every single design decision that you make for a dashboard matters, and that you can explain why you put this section of your dashboard here and this section of your dashboard there. And if you're conscientious about the way that you do that, the design will fall into place. And so the 3 questions I like to consider before building a viz or while I'm building one is, does the design element have good alignment and contrast? Does it look like everything is pieced together correctly? And does it look cohesive? And if it does, it will flow better. The second question is, how long will it take for the viewer to interpret a particular element? So I see it as this amount of time. If you have only 8 seconds to tell a story, you have to think each component of your visualization will contribute to that 8 seconds. So if you have a visualization that takes a long time to interpret, you might only be able to portray an insight with that one visualization as opposed to an entire dashboard that you're creating. And then lastly, what is the purpose of this design element? Is it aesthetics? Is it data visualization? Is it a combination of both? So if you kind of go through this routine of asking yourself questions as you're building your dashboard or Tableau public visualization, it will become more of a design process instead of kind of this free-for-all, laissez-faire, let me put this here, let me put this there, and bada bing, bada boom, you got your visualization. I like it to be more meticulous and controlled. And so the easy solution is to keep it simple. But the problem with that is if it's too simple, then it's not cool. You don't have that chart type with like the Sankey diagrams, the radial Sankey diagram that I've been seeing on Tableau Public a lot. And I try to accomplish this by not necessarily adding complex chart types, but to make sure that the design is cohesive and powerful as well. And kind of the purpose of the next half of this presentation is to discuss the tricks that I do to accomplish that. And you won't be like that pug, I guarantee. So here's some tips. The first thing that I do is to use a design element to anchor the alignment of future design elements. And if you look at some of the visualizations that I've created, and I'll explain this, I will walk through a visualization. I create these headers on the top of my visualizations that I draw these lines with, and I will align all the other elements of my dashboard to those elements. And if you just draw all these guidelines and align different elements to those guidelines, the visualization will automatically look more cohesive. So I just remove them. And you can see how, even though it's kind of sort of geometric below, everything's aligned, you got a good margin, everything seems to work, even though it's hard to tell that it works. It's because you're following a certain process where you're drawing these lines and making sure that each element is a child to a different element. If you're kind of a team fixed or a team, windowed version of Tableau, you don't really have to worry about this too much. But if you're team float like I am, you do have to make sure you're keeping the alignment correctly. And having a fixed windowed dashboard will allow you to automatically align stuff, so you don't have to worry too much. So I found out that doing this really enhanced my visualizations in terms of their design a lot. This is why I wanted to say it first. Really make sure that every time you put an element on your dashboard, especially long forms like I do, continue that guideline down for the rest of the long form and use it as a way to align other elements. The second thing is powerful typography really is the second tool that that is in your arsenal besides the visualization itself. And I think that typography is a really important language to maximize in order to bring a message across that complements your visualizations as well as it can. So I like to be very bold. Like I could have font this big in my visualizations. It really gives a message, and it also is kind of visual language in itself. So I think it's a really important complement to the visualizations that you're creating. And in addition, this is going to hurt my eyes a little bit, but vibrant colors are also extremely powerful. Being able to select a particular color palette and complementing it in a very bold way will also bring out the intricacies of your data and bring out any commentary that you're trying to associate with the visualizations that you're creating. And so you'll also find that a lot of my visualizations have this very stark contrast in the way that I'm bringing colors in. Okay, so also summarizing your insights in single sentence statements. I learned this actually in grad school where I had to read a bunch of abstracts. And when I read the abstracts, I read the headers of each section, and the abstracts are designed so that, well, the papers are designed that it has an abstract and then bold headers that describe what the purpose of the block of text that precedes it is going to be. And you, without having to read the block of text, which is the detailed information that substantiates the bold claim, you could basically get the insights of the paper by just reading the abstract, the title, and a few of the bold bullet points. And so I think that's a really powerful way to minimize the amount of time that someone's reading your visualization and achieving that 8-second rule. And so I tend to take the visualization I'm creating, think about what idea I'm trying to bring from that visualization, and summarizing it into one sentence, which is that bolded section on top there. That will allow the reader to prime their encoding of the information up front, so that you kind of know what you're expecting. You look at the visualization as a supplement of that idea, and then you can use your visualization to explore and elaborate on what that idea is. And then you can also provide subheadings for all your visualizations, but don't necessarily assume that the end user is going to read these subheadings, because people don't like to read. A lot of people don't like to read these subheadings because, again, you don't have too much time to do it. But if someone does have to read it, try to make it as short as possible, so you can maximize that sub description without having to take away too much time from your visualization. Creating a simple structure for your visualization is also really important, because the end user will expect the same pattern and not have to restructure the way that they're trying to interpret your visualization. So in the example here, we have a title. This is a cool title. And then you have section 1 where the text is on the left with the visualization on the right. And then you have the text on the right side with the visualization on the left. And then you go back to the same pattern where you have the text on the left, visualization on the right. So you're kind of reading it in a zigzag point of view. And as long as you keep that flow consistent, the person's going to keep their eyes to the right when they go down to the next section, assuming that they have to read something. And so it'll make your arguments flow easier. It makes the flow of the visualization a lot more simpler to understand. And there's more time for you to give visualization components in your viz without having to go past that 8-second rule. And then the last and most important thing is don't hesitate to ask for feedback. Conducting user testing is super important with your visualizations and also with your dashboards as well. Have someone who's a part of your team at work, or who's someone in the Tableau community who you can show your visualization to and ask, I'm going to give you 10 seconds, read through my visualization, and what insights can you generate out of that? And you time it. And when they're done, you ask them. And if they can't come up with any insights from your visualization, it won't pass my test. So I think it's really important, and you should test a lot of other people so that you have a general idea of how effective your visualization is at broadcasting ideas. Even if it doesn't have to necessarily be what insights, it has to be what type of information you're generating from the format of your visualization. Because I know at work, dashboarding is a lot more KPI centric, so you can't have someone read through 50 KPIs and come up with all those insights that fast. but you can generally say the top part is supposed to be KPIs about XYZ. The bottom part is supposed to be an elaboration on the KPIs on top. And then the bottom right side is supposed to be an elaboration of the stuff on the left. If you can achieve that, you know that your dashboard's very effective, and you know that you can potentially pass that 8-second rule and modify your dashboard to either give more or less time on that. And so here's where I want to go through one of my rideshare visualizations, well, the rideshare visualization that I created, which is a long form visualization that you see on the left. I'm going to go through a couple sections of the visualization. And because everything was deliberate design, I'm going to explain to you why I put each of these things in the visualization. So first, the title, again, big font. If anyone's interested, the font is Gilroy. There are free versions of Gilroy. It is a paid font, but 2 font weights are free. It's GILROY. Then I also adjusted the spacing in between the letters to make it my own version of it. But you have that big font that talks about the central idea of the visualization, rideshare travel in New York City. And on the top, you see I put these headers that says data sources and disclaimer. Those are 2 buttons that you can click to see what my data sources are, and a disclaimer about the data surrounding the visualization. And if you notice, it might be a little hard to see on my screen share, but there are guidelines that I actually drew for aesthetic effect, but also to actually anchor the other visualizations that you see below it. And so I tried to make sure that there's a little depiction of a car that I drew on the right-hand side that aligns with the bottom of the rideshare and NYC. So I want to keep everything kind of very geometric in this way. And then the bold purple represents kind of knowledge and safety, but also a good color contrast for the yellow that you have in taxis. That's a very reminiscent symbol in New York City taxis. So the second part is 3 different types of taxis that you see in New York City, and I wanted to highlight all 3 of them. Also want to keep the for-hire vehicles as the center, because it's going to be the main topic of this visualization, how for-hire vehicles are rising above the traditional taxi industry. Again, if you notice, the guidelines are separating the margin and elements from above. So here's kind of like the central type of section that mimics what I was talking about earlier, about how you have an idea on top where Uber and Lyft has dominated the rideshare market. And then a subtext where you don't necessarily have to read, but I have kind of an elaboration on that idea. And then a very simplistic visualization that shows for-hire vehicles absolutely dominating the yellow and green taxi industry over time since 2015. It's actually pretty incredible. And then I don't know if I put this on here. Okay, no, I didn't. But if you look at the left-hand side, the second point is COVID-19 has disrupted the rideshare industry, and I draw the same graph, and it's just like this line that shoots down at lockdown. That shows how there's a massive behavioral change when lockdown started in New York City. This section also shows how the saturation of rideshare across New York City has decreased substantially. Again, one sentence to kind of prime the idea, and then 2 visualizations that show how it's very dense on the left in 2019, and then in 2020, it's like a ghost town. You don't see any activity. That was like a couple of days after lockdown. So I try to make these powerful visualizations that show a single idea, so that when you're scrolling through my long form visualization, you're not having to, play around with filters or anything. It's right there for you. You get your idea and you leave. And then at the end of my visualization, I try to make a conclusion, which is ride sharing has crashed since the COVID-19 pandemic, but bike sharing has become a viable alternative to conventional ride sharing. I do show how bike sharing becomes a good alternative. And I put this at the end of the visualization in order to make sure that's the last thing that you leave. People see the first and last part of a design. And so good take-home message should be at the end. If there's anything that you learned, it should be this part. Takeaways. Always think how your designs are adding and subtracting time for the viewer experience. That's super, super important. Always consider that 8-second rule and be super realistic and empathetic of your end users. I think people give too much credit to the amount of attention that their end users have, and that ends up being a major problem when delivering visualizations. I'm very, very cautious with the amount of time that I try to give end users. And I test it a lot to make sure that it's very, very intuitive. Because when it actually comes down to it, if you have a C-suite level employee trying to look at your dashboards, if they're not going to get it in a couple of seconds, they're just going to go back to their traditional reporting tool. And for change management, that's very important at work. And for Tableau Public, it's very important because Twitter is an influx of Tableau visualizations. How do you make your visualizations stand out? And how do you make your visualization something that you can, with the influx of talent that we see on Tableau Public, how do you broadcast your insight in that small period of time that someone is scrolling through Twitter on their phone and looking at the thumbnail that you've posted on Tableau Public? It's all engineered. I try to engineer each part of the user experience so that I gain something and you gain something out of the visualizations that I create. The second point, maximize your insights by complementing your vises with powerful typography and alignment. So kind of be bold, play around with some typography. Google Fonts has free typography. If you have Adobe Creative Cloud, there's a whole suite of typography there. And then you can always look on blogs. There's some free versions of some professional typography that you see, but you can definitely tell a professional or semi-professional typographic family from one that you've seen before, and it really makes a big impact on your presentation. And then also make sure everything's aligned. When things aren't aligned, it just doesn't look clean. So just try to make sure that you can align as much as you can. And then finally, to kind of make sure that you follow the steps 1 and 2, you're asking others for feedback. And that's the strongest driver of user experience, because they are your users, and make sure that you really, really test them and give them different contingent environments for you to test your visualization so that you understand how different users react in different ways. I think that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. My hashtag, it's @DataVizDB. Follow me on LinkedIn. I try to answer as many questions as I can on those platforms. I'm more than happy to help everyone out. Again, thank you so much for the Philly Tableau User Group for allowing me to explain all of this to you. And yeah, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take some right now. Thank you.
Any questions? I guess not. But that was awesome, Dave. Thanks so much for making it all the way here to Philly.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a long 3 feet to my computer. I hope I can do it next time. It was hard, but I prevailed.
Well, thank you. Definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I guess we'll pass it over to John to tell us about your student journey.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. My name is John Tehrani, and I'm a grad student at Temple University studying business analytics. My presentation tonight primarily focuses on the dashboard I made for my data visualization final project last semester, with bits and pieces of my Tableau journey sprinkled in between. I used Tableau for the first time last September, and a primary catalyst early in my journey was the time that we would spend in class each week reviewing the work of featured authors. These opportunities opened my eyes and opened my mind to what is possible with Tableau, which, full disclosure, far exceeded my initial misconceptions that I would just be learning how to mash a bunch of buttons in an application and churn out cookie cutter dashboards. Through exploring the work of Judith and Lindsay and Kevin and others, I learned to think outside the box, feel free to be creative and have fun when constructing dashboards, and that the broader Tableau community was full of people willing to share their generous knowledge and time, tips, and best practices. I was so inspired, in fact, that I started to see dashboards everywhere. From class discussions to pop culture, to food, to data sets that I would see out in the wild. These two screenshots from my Apple Notes app, which is like my second brain, are a running list of, and a sneak peek at what's in the workshop currently, ideas I've had, concepts I've been inspired by, dashboards that I want to make. And I revisited this list when it was time to start developing the concept for the final project. I wanted to go back to a topic that had made a surprise appearance the first night of class when one of our classmates logged on to the Zoom call with a bottle of hot sauce as their avatar, somewhat surprisingly. And more specifically, explore this avenue through one of my favorite shows, Hot Ones. For those of you who haven't seen Hot Ones before, it's a web series where the host, Sean Evans, asks celebrity guests 10 questions. After each of the questions, both the host and the guest eat a chicken wing dipped in hot sauce. The sauces get hotter and hotter as the interview progresses. And within the hot sauce world, the key metric to keep in mind is Scoville units. These units measure the pungency or heat of a sauce. So the greater the number of Scoville units, the hotter the sauce. And with that, let's take a look at the dashboard. So here's where the final dashboard landed, some like it Hot Ones. I wanted to try to go with a bold title out the gate and incorporate the show logo as well as the basis for the color scheme I would use throughout the dashboard. I started by collecting the data from Wikipedia into a spreadsheet and was able to collect every hot sauce that had made an appearance on the show, the Scoville unit rating, and certain attribute data like country of origin when possible. And after I spent a little bit of time with the data, I noticed that the introduction of a new sauce for season 4, The Last Dab, had a transformative impact on the show. And my goal was to build a cohesive narrative around that concept that I could feature with a dashboard. And these top 3 charts, I think, tell some of that story. The area chart in the top left takes a look at a higher level at the average Scoville unit change season over season. And we see a 130% spike between seasons 3 and 4. The peak heat spikes a little bit in season 5 and then balances out through season 13, which was the most recent season, but at no point changes like it does between season 3 and 4. And the barbell chart to the right drills down into these 2 seasons specifically to further illustrate why this is the case. The sauces for questions 1 through 8 don't really change much in intensity between seasons 3 and 4, but season 9 or question 9 increases ever so slightly. And question 10, The Last Dab, we see a 4-time multiple increase, a jump from 500,000 Scoville units to 2 million Scoville units. This chart in the middle, I think, was meaningful to me personally because I learned a valuable lesson when making it. And that was to not get too attached to a dashboard design too early in the process. Originally, the concept for this dashboard had the area chart and the dumbbell chart stacked vertically on the left with a giant bottle of hot sauce on the right and a drop-down menu where you could select any of the sauces from the show and it would fill that bottle of sauce based on the number of Scoville units. This idea ended up being a lot better in theory than in practice. And the reason for that was I hadn't factored in the entirety of the range of values I was dealing with, where at the top end, we had the last dab with 2 million plus Scoville units, and most of the sauces on the show probably having 10,000 or fewer Scoville units. So the way I adapted this was to focus on the top 10 hottest sauces on the show, narrowing the scope of the analysis, and that somewhat fixed the range problem. And from there, I decided to represent the data proportionally. And this allowed me to maintain the fidelity of the data while maximizing visibility. And finally, I wanted to add a little extra touch and apply a technique we had learned about, which is using PowerPoint to remove the background of images. So I found an icon of a hot sauce bottle that I thought would be appropriate and was able to remove the background from it. With an assist from Josh, I was able to add a mask around the perimeter of the bottle so that it would obscure the parts of the bar chart that would appear on either sides of the cap for the sauces that made it that far. And with the last two visualizations on the dashboard, I wanted to have a little bit of fun. At this point, I had met the minimum requirements for the final project. So I wanted to challenge myself a little bit and see what I could create and learn along the way. While I am brand new to Tableau, I have a deeper background in cartography and spatial analysis. So a map was at the top of my mind. And spider maps in particular were something that I was generally interested in at the time. I had underestimated how not intuitive layers and map layers in Tableau would be, but I think that they've made some recent improvements in that area. And it sounds like there's a presentation later tonight that focuses on that. For this map, I pre-processed the data outside of Tableau using SQL. I geocoded each of the nation names to polygon shapes, transformed those polygons to centroids, created a point data set for New York City, and then loaded both of those into Tableau, where by creating a map with dual axes, I was able to assign each data set to each axis, synchronize the axes to flatten the map, and transform the points to lines as symbols. And for the GIF, that was an idea that I thought would be a really good idea until I learned that Tableau doesn't natively support animated GIFs. But after a little bit of internet sleuthing, I was able to find a solution that seemed reasonable enough. And the way I got this in here was to use a screen recording application called Cap to create the GIF. After I created the GIF, I stood up a bare bones website hosted on GitHub Pages, which is where I stored the GIF. And at that point, I had a URL that I was able to use to add an HTML object to the dashboard with the URL of the GitHub Pages site I had created to incorporate the GIF with full functionality into the dashboard. And a few concluding thoughts, things I've learned along the way during my short journey in the world of Tableau. Tableau as a tool primarily used in a business context does not mean that it's a tool exclusive to working with business data. Like prior to last semester, I had only heard about Tableau being used in a business context, and it had not occurred to me that people were expressing themselves creatively in super interesting ways with a wide range of data sets. And that was tremendous for me to learn and really has been a wonderful source of inspiration for me. The second would be to fit the dashboard to the data. Don't fit the data to the dashboard. Dashboard creation is an iterative process. That was something that I had to let go of some of my earlier concepts for the dashboard, but it worked out for the best because ultimately I landed with something that was good looking and told the story that was reflected in the data in the best way. And finally, the dashboard creation is a team sport. This goes back to a little bit about making sure to share your work early on, making sure to find inspiration from others in the Tableau public world, making sure to search the internet if you run into obstacles because someone may have posted a tutorial or a tip or run into the same problems as you, and was willing to share that knowledge with everybody else. So I learned very much and very early on to not go at it alone and to use the resources available to me to facilitate the best possible work. And with that, that's everything I've got for tonight. Thank you for having me, Philly Tableau User Group, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
John, I was really curious to see where you're going to go with dashboarding as a team sport, because I think anybody who's tried to build in collaboration with others in the same Tableau workbook would differ on that opinion. So interesting take there, but great stuff. Any questions for John? All right, quiet tonight. Certainly some feedback in the chat though, so check it out there. Great job, John. Thank you. And we'll turn it over to Ksenia to tell us about your journey.
So hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today. This is a great opportunity, so thank you so much for having me. I'm Ksenia. I'm in the second semester of my master's program in business analytics at Fox School of Business, and I'm currently also working as a data analyst in analytics and accreditation department here at Fox as well. And I had a great opportunity being in Josh's class last semester and definitely learned a lot in Tableau. That's really where my journey in Tableau started, and kind of wanted to share some of my work today with you, walk you through my journey so far. One of my first dashboards that I did was using TED Talk data. And the goal for this first dashboard was to really use different elements like large numbers and different graphs. And so I was looking at sentiment analysis for TED Talks and looking at negative and positive emotions, and what kind of combination gave the best or the largest amount of views. So really, this was a great experience to kind of first try doing containers and also doing little things like learning about the average line on bar charts and just trying to visualize the data. And overall, you know, after doing some analysis, I saw that both a little bit of negative and a little bit of positive emotions provide the greatest amount of views, and those who were on really extreme sides of either emotions tended to do poorly. Kind of as we went through the semester, we learned new techniques like using squares and hexagonal shapes to build maps within Tableau. So this is one of the visuals that I did with the map, just looking at pizza players across the United States. Just seeing that California and Texas had the largest amount of sales, and Pizza Hut and Domino's had the largest popularity. Sorry, 1 second. And as we were moving towards our final project, I was trying to find inspiration for what I can do, and I utilized Tableau Public to really see what I can get inspired by and use for my final project. And this was the visual that really stood out to me. I really loved the way that they incorporated an interesting map background for the whole of this, and I learned about Mapbox. And also another element that I really liked in this visual was definitely how the lighthouses were so vibrant and just they look very luminous. So I definitely wanted to use that in my final project as well. And then for my final project, I decided to work with a Tesla dataset. And I was like, I always wanted to work with a Tesla dataset. I'm a huge fan. So I found the supercharger network data that I could work with. And so I decided to use Mapbox to really incorporate in the background of my visual. And I also wanted my data points to have that kind of the standing out by the same luminous way that my inspirational list had. So I used like a dual layer for an icon, and then having a slight transparent bubble that made it stand out a lot. And just overall, I really loved the outcome and how it almost looked like it was on fire. And then I also wanted to show the growth of the superchargers across the years. And I wanted to create a bar chart, but I also had an idea why not make it into an electric plug. So I was trying to find the right icon for electric plug, and then making sure it was the same color, and then making sure it aligned with the bar chart. I think I had a lot of issues with that. And then kind of ending the visual with just simple numbers, looking at how supercharger technology is improving over the years, and that Tesla is delivering more vehicles than ever. And of course, you know, helping to improve our environment. Kind of after I was done with my final project, I wasn't entirely sure what else I can try and do. And I got great advice on trying workout Wednesdays. And they're really great, and they really push me to learn new features in Tableau and just try out and challenge myself in different ways. This was one of the recent challenges in building a dashboard just with containers. And those challenges definitely helped me in my daily work. Now I can see that, especially using containers, my dashboards are a lot cleaner and more organized. And recently there was a challenge with using a brush filter, but I wanted to use it on a data set that I was personally interested in. I've been getting into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency a lot lately, and blockchain, so I wanted to play around with the data set. And so I used a brush filter on the 5-year historical data of Bitcoin. And another two things that I wanted to try was creating an interactive button that could go between two different worksheets and show different types of graphs. And this was also my first time trying to create a candlestick in Tableau as well to visualize. So to kind of conclude, my journey has been short so far, just started last semester, so I'm looking forward to new challenges coming through. And I'm definitely going to be continuing doing workout Wednesdays. I thought they're really great in building technical skills. And I also love just being on Tableau Public and looking for inspiration and seeing what others are doing. So I'm excited for my future journey with Tableau. And thank you so much for today. And let me know if there are any questions. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. Lots of comments coming through. Any questions for Ksenia? Just lots of praise. So great job. Thank you. All right, Taimoor, I think you're up.
Yeah, let me take it away from here. Okay, let me pull up my screen. Let me know when you see it. Do you guys see my screen?
I think it just came up. We're good.
Okay, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
All right, so hi everybody. I am Taimoor Malik. And as a matter of fact, I'm also Josh Tapley's student, but I graduated from his class about a year ago. Not a year ago, I think it's been 14 months now. And I've been using Tableau since then. and I've been fortunate enough to sort of make a career out of Tableau. And today I will be showing you the Tableau map layers. So this session is going to be completely hands-on. I don't have any PowerPoints or anything. So if you look at these tabs here, you can probably guess the agenda. I'm going to give you 2 examples of map layers, but then I also have Workout Wednesday. We are going to try and solve Workout Wednesday week 9, which was actually on map layers. I think this will be really helpful for you to really understand what you can do with map layers. So I probably need more than 20 minutes. So let me just get into it. So first thing, you need version 2020.4 at least to use map layers. So if you don't have version 2020.4 or greater, you cannot do map layers. And the second thing that I probably want to do is to give shout out to a few people who I learned map layers from. So Luke Stanky, he has a great content on map layers. So if you go to his YouTube, I think it goes by Data Coach. He has great videos on map layers and what you can actually do with map layers. So I would highly encourage you to go through his Tableau public profile. So for example, if you look at this, this dashboard, this is actually done using map layers. And it opens up really a lot of possibilities when it comes to map layers. And the second person who I would like to give shout out to and who I learned a lot from is Mccann. He has great content on map layers, probably the best that is out there. So if you want to go through his profile and see some of the works that he has done using map layers. So for example, this was actually done using map layers. This was actually done using map layers. And I think this was done using map layers as well. Another thing that I would want to show is, which I cannot show because, okay. So this is one of his dashboard. And if you look at this, you'd probably think that it's a dashboard, but it's actually just a single worksheet. And he did it all using map layers. And when I was trying to re-engineer it, it took me actually like 4 or 5 hours to sort of understand how he did it. But it's just single sheet. I would think it's like 6 sheets at least, but he did it using map layers. And I think he's using make line functions to sort of make things look the way they look in this dashboard. So shout out to these 2 guys. And now let's get into it, right? So let's do something with dual axes, right? We all know what you can do with dual axes. I'm gonna double click on state. I'm gonna make it map, right? I'm going to go here. I'm going to do some formatting. I'm going to do it again, just so I can get rid of everything. I think I left this. So I'm going to do sales by state, right? So we have sales by state, something that we can do, everybody can do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dual axis. So I'm just hold command and drag it to the right side. Now you have 2 axes, right? And what I'm going to do is for the second axis, I want to show profit by city. I'm going to drag in city. So we have profit by city here, and I'm going to make it circle. And I'm going to color it. I'm just going to color it as, okay, why is it giving, okay, it's on color. I'm going to drag profit on here. I'm going to size this by profit, which I actually already have. And then I'm going to decrease the opacity and make dual axes. Okay, so this is actually showing you sales by state and profit by city, okay? This is using dual axes. But what if I want to add another layer to it? I cannot do that using, dual axes because I'm just limited to axes. I cannot get the third axis. So this is where map layers comes in. So it opens up a ton of opportunities because what it really is doing is it's actually giving you third axis to play with. So initially we had X and Y axes, but now we have Z axes as well. So let's just do this again using map layers. So we have the same map again. And what I'm going to do is this time I'm going to drag city. And if I drag it onto the canvas, you will see a pop-up that says that add a mark flare. And if I drag it on that, you will see city, right? I'm just going to add state to the level of detail just because I get all the mark types that I was getting earlier, right? And then I'm going to size this by profit. right? I'm going to decrease the opacity and probably make it black. So we have the same thing like we had with, dual axes, right? Now let's do something else. I want to actually see the boundaries for each region. Now this is something that you can actually do with dual axes, but we cannot do anything further than this. So I'm going to drag region now, and I'm going to drop it here. And now if you see here, I got a mark for each region. So we have 4 regions. So you see 4 circles there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this map. I'm going to do opacity 0. And then I'm going to include border. So now you will see that you will have border for each region. And I'm going to change the color just so we can see the border. So now you see that you have border for each region, right? Now this is something that you cannot do with the dual axes. This is something that you would have to use map layers to do. And you can add as many layers as you can. I was just reading someone used actually 36 layers, and he could still use more. So I don't think there is a limit to the number of layers you want to use. So yeah, that's one example. Now let's do another example, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag state onto the canvas. I'm going to map layers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to color it by sales. And I want to change the color. So we have the same thing there, right? Now, what if I want to see for each region a breakdown of profit by subcategory? Okay, this is a bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag region. And I'm going to drop it on the marks layer. So now we have a mark for each region, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size. I'm going to make it a pie chart, okay? Everybody loves pie chart. And I'm going to drag category onto the color. Okay, but I got rid of that. So I'm going to drag region to the detail, and I'm going to drag category onto the color. So we have, for each category, we have a section of a pie chart, and I'm going to angle this by profit. Okay, now this is something that you can actually do with dual axes as well. But what if I want to make a donut chart out of it? I cannot do that with dual axes, right? I'm just going to increase the size a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag region again. I'm going to drag it on marks layer. Now we have a and there you go. You have a donut chart on a map. So this is something that you cannot actually do with dual axes. You can obviously make a pie chart on top of a map, but you cannot make a donut chart on top of a map. So this is second example of map layers. Now that you know how to make a donut chart on a map, I'm going to show you a workout Wednesday, week 9. So I'm really big on workout Wednesday, and I keep track of the workout Wednesdays that I do. So this is my time for 2021, and we are going to do week 29, which actually took me 27 minutes. But this is actually my 3rd time doing it, so it will be rather easy. So let me show you what the challenge is about. Okay, so this is the challenge, right? So when you look at it, it's really something very straightforward. You have a map, just an orthodox map. And if I click on this map, you can see that there is a drill down. Okay, this needs to reload. But if I click on any of the country, there is a drill down, and you can see that for each country, you can see, what is the population that's, living in urban areas. So you can see for China, it's 52%. And this is what we are going to create. So if you look at it, there are 2 things happening. Obviously, they're using map layers because you have a donut chart on top of a map. And the second thing you can see is there's some kind of action going on. So there are actually 2 ways you can do this. The first way is to use set actions. So if you go to my Tableau public profile and download the workbook that I have, I used set actions, but I'm going to show you how to do this using parameter actions today. So there is some kind of action going on, and then map layers, straightforward, right? So let's try to create this. Let's try to do this challenge, right? And we will be using the world indicators data that comes with Tableau. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this country region. I'm going to make this a map. And then I am going to go to map layers, just a bit of formatting. And then I'm going to make it dark. And then I'm going to get the region onto the colors. So now we're almost there. Look, we have the same thing just like they have it. So, but if I click on any of these countries, nothing happens, right? Other than just a zoom in or anything like that, right? So there is some, we probably need to do something that will allow us to filter down to each country. And the way I would do that is to use parameters. I'm going to create a parameter that will say that p.selected, that's too many E's. And I'm going to make it a string, oops. And I'm going to leave it empty, okay? This is the parameter that I'm going to use to drive the selection of that map, okay? Just empty parameter. Oh, I didn't create that parameter. Okay, do something again, string. Okay, same thing, empty parameter. I'm going to show this parameter. Now I need to create a calculation that will actually take in value from this parameter. And the first thing that I will do is I will create a parameter that will actually take in all countries, right? So p dot all, c dot all. And this calculation will be if this parameter is empty, then show me all country regions. So essentially what this calculation is doing is it's actually telling us that, hey, if this parameter is empty, show me all the regions that we have in the data set. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to region, country, and I'm going to drop this on country region. And we have the same thing, right? But if I type in anything else, you won't see anything. Okay, everything goes blank just because the calculation doesn't know what to do with that. So in order to handle that, what we are going to do is we are going to create another calculated field, which will say that c dot selected country, right? And that calculation will say that if the parameter that we have created is equal to a certain country, then show me that particular country only. Okay. Very straightforward, right? And then I'm going to make this, where is it? Country region. Okay, so now this is the second thing that we have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this and I'm going to place this on top of the map layer that we already have, right? And then you can see that something is going wrong here. C dot selected country. And this is, okay, hold on. Let me see what's going on there. C dot selected country is equal to the country region, then only show me the country region. Okay, so this is actually acting up. Let me see what's going to happen. This profit. Okay, this is good. Selected country. I'm actually dragging the right country on top of it. Okay, now actually I was dragging the wrong country on top of that. And I'm going to remove this. Okay, so we have the selected country right now. This is the same calculation. I'm going to show this again. What this calculation is saying is that if the parameter has a certain country, then show me only that country. Now that parameter has no country in it, so it's not showing us anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag region on colors just so we have everything. I'm going to type in, let's say, China. This should show you actually China. And I'm going to make this a map. So we're almost there, right? Now, if I clear this parameter again, we get back to the original view. And if I type in another country, let's say Brazil, we'll go into that country. Now, the next thing that we need to figure out is how to make that, a donut chart. So if I go to China, we have a donut chart in here. So for that, what I have to do is I need to grab that selected country again. And then I'm going to drop this again. So for that particular country, we have a mark type. I'm going to make this a pie chart just like we did earlier. I'm going to increase the size of it, right? And we need to show the percentage of urban population, right? So for that, I need to get some measure names on here. I'm going to color this by measure, and I need urban. Okay, so this is urban population and this is rural population, and that's what we want. And I'm going to angle this by population, okay? Filter. Okay, so what's going on here? Let me drag this out. Let me see what's going on. Okay, I see what's happening. We actually lost the country region, right? So now we have that, and I'm going to drag measure values onto the angle so that we have the right angle. Let me see what's going on. It's acting up. rural. These are the two measure names that we want to see. And the second thing that we want to see is urban population. So we have two measure names, and we are doing it, and we are breaking it down by both measure names, okay? And now what I'm going to do is, just like we did earlier, for that particular country, I'm going to drag this again. I'm going to make it up just a simple circle so that we have the donut chart, right? I'm going to color this by region, just so we have the same colors as the background. So there you go, here we have it. Okay, let me increase the size a little bit. And then let me go to there and let me increase the size of this and urban population, and I will just drop it on label. And this is actually going me the wrong value because it's different. And but yeah, essentially that's what's happening, okay? And I'm going to get out of this by clearing this parameter. And if I type in another country, let's say China, you don't get anything because it's capital C. It gives you the donut chart for that particular country and the percentage population. So that's 57%. And obviously the calculations are not being done right, but this is essentially how would you do it. And if you want to run some actions on it, you would go there, you would run an action, you would say that change the parameter that we actually created, and you would probably want to change all countries. And if it's clear, set it to empty. And if I click on it again, you get that. And this is your Workout Wednesday challenge. Now, a lot of people think that Workout Wednesdays are very difficult, but we actually did it in what, like 8 minutes? So yeah, this is just a basic of what you can do with map layers. There are a ton of things that you can do with map layers, and it opens up a lot of options to do crazy things in Tableau. And this is essentially how would you do it. So if you look here in this Workout Wednesday, we have how many layers? This is the first layer, which is actually giving us all of the countries. And then we have the second layer, which is actually giving us the country that we select. And then there is a third layer, which is actually giving us the pie chart. And then there is a fourth layer, which is actually giving us just a circle that sits on top of that on top of that pie chart to make it look a donut chart. So these are your 4 layers. And that's how you use map layers. That's all I have, Josh.
I feel like there's some false advertising in there. Like Workout Wednesday only takes you 8 minutes. That was intense. I feel.
But it actually took me 27 minutes the first time I did it. I keep track of all challenges. But I think a lot of people think that workout Wednesdays are very difficult. I don't think they are. Like, for example, if you look at week 3, I couldn't complete it. That's why you see 64. Some of the challenges are very difficult. But I think if you want to learn real Tableau, if you really want to know how to do real analytics in Tableau, I would probably go with Workout Wednesday.
Very impressive, I would say. Your speed is just amazing. I followed a good chunk of what you did, so
I don't think a lot of people would have followed, but essentially it's 4 layers. And if you want to see how to do it, I think they already have a solution on their blog. So this is week 9. If you didn't get how I did it, you'll probably get how they did it. But I think they are using set actions. I used a similar approach, but I think parameter actions are better when it comes to the drill down thing. But yeah, like if you guys want to learn real Tableau, I would probably go with Workout Wednesdays. It's not difficult, I can tell you that.
Pretty
another thing,
amazing.
Sorry,
Any questions for Taimoor? Taimoor, do you still have is the print still on your keys, or do you is your keyboard just blank at this point? Because I feel like they would just wear off pretty quickly.
No, I use a portable keyboard. It's very small. It's for my iPad.
Nice.
So just use that. But hey, I'm also active on Tableau forums. So if you guys have any burning questions that you think you need help, please tag me on Tableau forums. I try to be very active there. So if you guys have any questions, or if you guys have any trouble with LODs, I love to work with LODs. Maybe not table calculations. Throw them my way.
Awesome. And how long have you been using Tableau again?
About 14 months.
14 months?
Yeah.
Awesome. It's amazing stuff that you can do. Lots of great, powerful techniques. Map layers look cool. Parameter actions, I think, are amazing. So, great stuff. Any questions for Taimoor?
All right.
You left us all speechless.
Yeah, I think I was rushing through it. No, because it's what, 7:12. I started at what, 6:50. So that's about 18 minutes.
It was a lot. You gave us a lot of content in 18 minutes. So.
Yeah, I think I was rushing through things.
Very cool. Well, hey, we'll have a recording so you can watch it in slow motion later.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, we're gonna pass it off to Laura. And is it Jake?
Yes, it is. Are you here?
Yeah, Taimoor, do you mind stop sharing so that I guess I can just share over you. That seems rude. Okay. Oh, that's annoying. Hold on 1 second. All right, move the video over here and start the slideshow. Switch. All right, does that look good, Jake?
Not yet. Now it does.
There we go.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, Laura. Cool. All set. Taimoor, really great work. That was awesome. We're going to switch gears a little bit. I don't know if Josh gave any sort of overview, but we just want to talk about a tool called DBT. It's local to the Philly market, and we'll just talk through that a little bit. So I'll introduce myself first. I'm Jake Hannan. I'm an analytics engineering consultant at Slalom. Been here for about 13 or 14 months or so. I do have my Tableau desktop certification. And outside of work and data things, you can find me playing with my nephews that are golden retrievers or drinking beer. So yeah.
And I am Laura Haase. I am also a member of the team of Slalom in our Philadelphia office as a principal in our data and analytics practice. I'm also Tableau Desktop certified, although I believe my certification expires this month, so in like 5 days. A little bit of fun stuff about me. I've been fostering a bunch of cats in quarantine, so really using that time well, ended up adopting one. Definitely having the itch to get back to Vegas, which is definitely my second home after Philly. And of course, all things data.
Awesome. Yeah, so for today's agenda, we'll talk a little bit about Fishtown Analytics, the company that maintains DBT. I'll give you sort of a not so great day in the office and sort of why I think this platform is so powerful. Then we'll talk a little bit about what the actual platform is, highlight a little bit of the key functionality, some of the things that really jump out to me. And then Laura will share a demo of a Tableau dashboard that we've created and powered up by DBT or data build tools. So any questions before we get started? I know, we've got a chat and things like that, but if not, we'll keep going. So yeah, go ahead, Laura. So the first thing, this is super important. I saw a lot of agendas and tweets and things coming out. This tweet from Taylor Murphy articulates it very well, that every time someone capitalizes DBT, a SQL query dies. So it's important to note that DBT is not uppercase. That is the dialectical behavior therapy, which I have no idea what it is. And all lowercase DBT is the platform that we're talking about, our data build tool. So I felt I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. I think if there were Fishtown Analytics people on here, they might scold me for not articulating that. So just wanted to clear the air with that. So awesome. So a little bit about Fishtown. As you may or may not have guessed, they are local to the Philadelphia area. They are based in Fishtown, Philadelphia. So they're a Philadelphia-based startup, and DBT is the primary product that they maintain. They also do consulting services, so they help startups or large companies sort of build up their DBT practice in the data warehousing space. They're a smaller startup, but they have some serious backers. So they've raised close to about 43 million through their Series A and Series B. That was over the course of last year. And like I mentioned, as you look at the bottom, they're used by a wide array of companies. Some big ones that pop out: Drizzly, which I believe just got acquired by Uber, WAG, which is a dog walking service, and there are a couple other ones in there as well. So yeah, really awesome. There's a lot of passion for it. The DBT Slack has, I think, 4,000 people on there now, and I'm a part of it. So if you join up and you want to reach out, feel free to do so. And of course, they're hiring like crazy, given that $43 million in funding. They're trying to fuel a lot of growth. So if you're interested in some of the things that you see today, be sure to give that a check. Awesome. So this is a real conversation. I think Andrew Ellison's actually here on watching this today, so it's funny to joke with him. But this is sort of a not so great day in the office, and why I think a platform like DBT plays such a key role ultimately in like visualizing in Tableau. So he and I, we had a rough day. It's 11:30 in the morning, and he's asking me a bunch of questions about basically a data model that's powering a Tableau dashboard. We had succumbed to having to use custom SQL in our Tableau dashboard. And so we had to download the workbooks. Andrew's saying, hey, what the hell are we doing here? What are we joining on? Why does this logic exist? What does it really do? And it really just makes for kind of a cumbersome experience between two analysts, right? We don't really have a good idea of what's in there. Maybe someone else had built this dashboard out. We're not sure where things are coming from. And so we're kind of open to, yeah, Andrew, thanks. So we can kind of open ourselves up to a lot of error. And that can be concerning as someone trying to maintain, really good and trusted data. And that last bullet point that I put here, if you're trusting your data models to end up in Tableau and using custom SQL and things like that, you sort of abstract away from the warehouse. And what that means is, hey, of course Tableau is great, but if for some reason a VP comes into your organization and says, hey, we're done with Tableau, you've sort of lost all that logic there because it lives and dies in the tool. So just something to be considerate of. And when we think about sort of the viewpoint for analytics engineering, we tend to believe that things like that should be done in the warehouse, and that's where DBT comes in. So, so if you go to the next slide, we can talk about that. Awesome. So yeah, I've said it a bunch, but what actually is DBT? So it's a data transformation tool. If you think about sort of the old paradigm of analytics, which would be ETL, we're using like an Informatica or a large company to do the extract, transform, and load, all separate from your warehouse, separate from your database. Now we have this new sort of world that we're calling ELT, which is extract, load, and transform. And so when you look at the visual at the bottom, you have your data loaders. So you think about your disparate data sources, whether it's Salesforce, Postgres, maybe custom flat files. you're using a data loader like a Fivetran or a Stitch, or maybe you're writing custom Python to extract and load that. Then you're loading it into the warehouse. The big players today are BigQuery, Snowflake, Redshift, and I think they have support for Postgres as well. But now everything sits raw in the warehouse, and we use DBT on top of that to then transform everything that we need, create all those transform data models, and then push that out to Tableau or Looker, any tool of your choice. And what's really great about this is it leverages software engineering principles, which we'll get into a little bit, but it's really just a new way of working. And if you go to the next slide, Laura, it's really this idea of, if you think about data engineering, or maybe the way in which you're working today as a Viz consultant or an analyst working in Tableau, if you have things that need to happen to the data model, whether it be way downstream or way upstream rather, typically you need to engage BI or maybe the data engineering team. They need to do all of that heavy lifting and modeling. Like I said, if it's in Informatica, maybe updating those workflows. But with a tool like this and a platform like this, I think it really allows data engineering and what we're calling analytics engineering to really coexist. So everyone works within the warehouse, right? You think data engineering is responsible for ensuring that the pipelines of all the raw data into the warehouse are maintained. Excuse me. And then analytics engineers, or Viz folks, can write the source of truth models that they've worked with the business to help define. That all lives in the warehouse, maintained there, and then you connect to your BI tool of choice to then visualize it for reporting. So yeah, really, really cool stuff. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water. Cool. And so how would you actually use DBT? What's great about it is, if you haven't worked with, if you're not a DBA or you've never done core data engineering work, a lot of the data definition statements are things that you typically have to maintain. DBT allows you to get away from that. So all you really do when you're writing data models is just expressing SQL, which, if you're an analyst, hopefully you're kind of privy to that and you enjoy doing that. So if you can write good SQL, then you can write data models that can be in the warehouse and used by anyone in the business. So again, just a model is basically a single SQL statement. So you would create a new file. In this example, they have my first DBT model.sql and my second DBT model.sql. And then you're just expressing plain SQL. In the example on the right, that would create a table called customers, and you would be able to access that in the schema of your choice, based on whatever warehouse you're using and things like that. So again, you're just maintaining several SQL files and a YAML file for your project, which maintains sort of your connections to the warehouse and sort of the pieces that go into standing this up. Cool. And then the other way that DBT works, so you have these SQL files and you're generating relationships between them. So DBT uses DAGs, or directed acyclic graphs. So basically it's waiting for one job to complete before completing the next. So if you think about in the transformation process, you have your raw source table, then you want to go to the staging table and do some transformations, and that will happen in two different tables perhaps. And then you don't want your sort of prep table that you see in the bottom there. You don't want that to do anything until the steps above it have already completed. So DBT uses DAGs to make sure that all of the work sort of upstream has happened, and then that sort of translates downstream. So again, just really cool and sort of following those software engineering principles. Awesome. So these are a few of the key features that DBT sort of articulates in their value proposition. We won't go through them all. I think I have a few picked out, but some of their main highlights are modularity. So the ability to write code and keep it reproducible, as I've sort of mentioned, package management, automated testing, which we'll cover, documentation, which is super powerful in the world of data discovery and data lineage. Excuse me. We'll talk about version control for sure. And then something else that they cover is sandboxing and just the ability, what's called blue-green deployments, where you can swap out your different code, which is great. Awesome. So data quality testing, I think it's near and dear to my heart. Hopefully it is to everyone else's. You want to ensure that your users, when they're consuming your dashboards, they trust it. There's nothing worse than a Friday at 9 a.m. Hey, this doesn't look right. I'm sure Tapley has gotten that a lot at Comcast. Maybe not. No, I'm sure not. Awesome. So yeah, with DBT, all you have to do is basically write out within your project, in your YAML file, just to say, within this model, we want to write this test, which is not null. on a specific column. And what DBT will do for you, and you can see it sort of running on the right-hand side in the GIF there. I don't want to restart my computer now. It's going to run a bunch of queries on your data to say, find the specific column that Jake is asked to test against, ensure that there are no nulls. And if that passes, then raise a pass. And if for some reason that were to fail, which means that there's something wrong in the data, it would raise an error and it would stop completing. So in theory, if you have good testing set up, you wouldn't have to worry about erroneous data. Maybe your dashboard might be stale, the data might not be there, but at least you can trust that, hey, it's valid and test it against. So just another way to kind of create transparency and trust within the data, which is super important. Awesome. Documentation. Yeah, so this is an awesome one. There are a lot of tools out there. I know Tableau has some like cataloging built in, but with DBT, this allows you to document as you write your code. So as you're writing your SQL statements, selecting the different column names, you can simply define them within this YAML file and say exactly what the description of that is. And then it'll generate both a website for you that some people can consume, or what's awesome, and Laura's going to share a little bit, it creates a JSON file that spits out all of this documentation that you can connect to in Tableau if you wanted to create a dashboard on that to see what's really in your data models. Awesome. This is probably the biggest one and near and dear to my heart is version control. And so it goes back to the conversation with Andrew on over Teams. In our current project, Andrew and I are actually staffed together. We're sending back and forth text files of SQL, that can get up to hundreds of lines of code long. And there's no real way to really test like what we're actually doing. We have to, run it in the warehouse of our choice and ensure things are working. But with DBT, we get to use a version control system of our choice. So like GitHub, and you get to create a PR, you can submit that for review. And then I could say, Laura, hey, can you test against this for me? Do you have any questions with why I'm creating this model? Get everyone to review it and approve it. And then we can push that into the main branch, which is super awesome.
All right. Anything, Jake, that you wanted to show before we kind of jump into the demo?
No, I'll just give a quick overview of the demo. I think I have 2 slides to talk through it. So we just wanted to do something kind of fun with this. So I have been wanting to explore my own personal Spotify data for quite some time. So Spotify offers some really robust APIs to get, data around your playlists, and they have track features and things like that. So I wrote a quick Python script to actually do that for my specific playlist ID, grab all those songs, and then for every single song in my playlist, which I think is like 1,000 songs now, pretty proud of that. Grab some specific audio features like acousticness, danceability, energy, just to see I know the music I listen to, but it'd be cool to visualize it. And also Last.fm, which is, I think it's a radio streaming service. They are integrated with Spotify, and you're able to sort of record all of your streaming listening history. So they're called scrobbles. I think I call them squabbles in the deck, but so you can see, I think I've been doing this for the past 2 years, all of your listening history. And then what we've done here is we've mashed it up together. So you have the Spotify audio track data mashed against my listening history, and then we get some cool visualizations from that, which is pretty neat. And how we actually did this, of course, is using DBT, right? So I had a Python script with a CSV output. We had the Scrabble data, not Squabble, landed that into BigQuery from cloud storage. And then, like I mentioned with DBT, all I did was write, I think it's 2 different select statements to say, select the specific fields from each of these files. I want to join and create a model. And now Laura's able to connect to BigQuery in Tableau. And now she's using the model that we've tested against, documented, and feel good about. So that's really the power of DBT and why we're so kind of excited about it. And then I'll hand it off to Laura to kind of show that output.
Right. So really quickly before I jump directly into Tableau, to Jake's point,
Yep.
The documentation aspect of this is huge. I'm not a coder by nature. Most of my coding has been done in SQL and Tableau, if you can consider that coding. So anything around, a lot of documentation around code or even using Git is something that I'm not super strong in. But going through in DBT, they make it really, really straightforward and really simple and very SQL friendly. So they have a lot of great documentation around their documentation that basically tells you what's generated every time you generate one of these files. So the main ones being the manifest, the catalog, run results, and sources. So you can go in and see, when it's produced based off of what commands that you're running, and then all of the information that's captured by that, which I think is huge for anyone who's ever had to document any solution that they've built. If you're like me, you wait until the bitter end and you're going through, 30 calculations where you're kind of kicking yourself for not doing it sooner. So doing that while you're actually building out these models is super powerful from a developer standpoint. And then the other thing, while this presentation thing is in my way, the other thing I'll mention is, again, while Jake's little GIF showed the command line interface, I'm not a coder by nature. They do have a nice little IDE on their website at cloud.getdbt.com. They have a really nice demo for you to get set up and started with it, and it's super straightforward. And to Jake's point, right, your SQL in here looks like SQL if it was written against SQL Server. So I think it's definitely low barrier to entry in terms of getting started with DBT. So then jumping over into Tableau, we won't spend too much time on the dashboard itself, though, as you can probably tell, Jake is a big EDM fan. So as he mentioned, some of the metrics that he captured around BPM, energy, speechiness, danceability, loudness, tracking that running total of his streams over time. And this is in minutes, so quite a lot of music you're listening to, Jake. And then his top 25 artists based off of the number of streams from that artist. So again, some pretty crazy numbers with some of these artists up here. The piece that's more interesting, and I can kind of show a little bit, is the documentation that I alluded to is all available in these JSON files. So I brought down the run results JSON file. Anyone who's worked with JSON know that it's not necessarily the most intuitive. You have to select the schema level. So if you were using this kind of real time or real application, you might want to do a little bit of cleaning before bringing it directly into Tableau. But the run results was one that was actually quite simple for me to start to bring in. So I selected the schemas that I wanted and started to actually build out some visualizations. So often users will say, this data is great, this visual is great, where is it coming from? How can I trust it? So we created a tab called data source information, and it's right next to your streaming data in the same workbook on the same server. And we have the database information, the schema, and then the three main objects, I guess you could call it, that are utilized. So Jake actually had two tables and a view that he created. One to bring in not the squabbles, I can't remember the name now that it's wrong in front of me. As well as the playlist metrics from Spotify. As you can see, we have information as to whether it's a table or a view, also what it references. So this comes into that data lineage. This overall fact table references these two other tables that Jake already created. And then here, Jake has some good documentation about what's in this table. The other one's not so much, but again, some of that additional information that while he's coding, it's right there. It's not something that you have to go in and do after the fact or separately from the application. Added a little bit of functionality here to, have a filter action to actually show the SQL statement. So maybe for some of your more savvy users, they can go in here and actually see, okay, he's getting the artist from this, the track from here, and this is how he's actually performing the join. And again, his more simple queries for the playlist metric and the squabbles underneath. And then the final piece here, again, just from the run results, we have some of the refresh times and when it was last run. So you can see if there's any queries that are hanging up your underlying database. So of course, Jake writes performant code and the data volumes aren't too crazy, but we can see the elapsed time and the execution time of each one of these. And as part of this, we see the models and any tests. So as Jake mentioned, he's writing those tests in the YAML file as he goes, and he can see, the not null, source not null, and that those tests are executing successfully. So this is like a very brief example of how, obviously DBT doing your transformations outside of custom SQL and keeping that in the database is super valuable. But also it's creating a lot of artifacts that you can tap into directly and get a lot of that data lineage, a lot of information about how it's running that benefits your end users and helps them trust the data that they're looking at. So that's all we have. I mean, does anyone have any questions for us or want us to go back to anything in the presentation?
I'll start with like, how does this compare to, I mean, what would you have used before? And how does this compare? Like why DBT over something else?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? I had to swap to a different laptop. My other one just blew up. Yeah, so I think it's sort of the thought of like the old school versus new school. I think in traditional organizations, you have this idea of ETL, where you're using Informatica, right, to do all those complex transformations. It's outside of your warehouse. But now with the onset of the snowflakes of the world, where you have this like separated storage and compute, and you can really make use, it's like you have a Ferrari now versus maybe like, I don't know, a Honda back in the day. And so now it just makes much more sense to leverage the capabilities that are there, because now you have it all sort of centralized in one specific tool. Going through the Informatica workflows, it's all GUI based and you have to really know what you're doing there. I think if you can express things as pure SQL, anyone who's privy to SQL and analysts alike can adapt to that and sort of understand it more quickly, which I think adds a lot of value as well.
Cool. Anybody else questions?
So the one plug I'll make is DBT or Fishon Analytics had a conference this year called Coalesce. And there's a presentation on there, and I can actually ping it in the chat, called Analytics on Your Analytics, where someone I believe was using Looker, not necessarily Tableau, but to do some of the stuff of essentially looking at the data that's generated by the JSON files. So it's interesting. I mean, I think it's a challenge we're faced with a lot in what we're seeing at our clients now more and more, is that as you want to expand who's able to create their own visualizations, you just need to have more of those trustworthy data sources. And beyond just being trustworthy, like having people be able to say like, well, I can see the SQL that's written. I know it's pulling this from the right table because I know the data that I need to be bringing in.
Great. Looks like there's a question in the chat. What types of companies would you recommend use DBT? Could it help an org with less data engineers to support ETL, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the state of maturity within your analytics organization. So like for large companies, maybe it's a Comcast or other like really large corporations, they have these sort of deeply instilled pipelines and tech stacks. And so that migration might not be a pure lift and shift, and there might be a lot of work there. So maybe it's not the best value. I mean, you have to think about sort of the rebuild versus buy. Now with that, what I'll say is DBT, their IDE or their cloud version is relatively cheap, but the command line is completely free. So if you stand up your own sort of orchestration pipelines and everything, your cost is minimal, which is really great. But so I think newer companies, with these newer tools of a Snowflake or a BigQuery, I think it makes a ton of sense for those smaller companies to stand up the modern data stack. And if you're a larger company, maybe there's a little bit of overhead, but I think there's a ton of value in proving out like why we should shift from maybe Informatica over to this new way of working.
Cool.
Hey,
Any
Jake,
other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So Jake, you said that the transformation part of the ETL happens in the data warehouse.
Yeah.
So does it use your data house computational power? Like the
Sorry.
So does it use your computational power of data warehouse?
Does it use the computation power of your data?
Oh
warehouse?
yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear it. Sorry, my ears are going. Yeah, so it depends. It runs everything right in the warehouse. So you define basically the way when you're configuring DBT. If you're using Snowflake, for example, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but you would create a transformation or a transform user. You would set their default warehouse to like some analytics warehouse that you've created. Maybe it's a large or a medium, and you're consuming all those credits. You're using everything, all the resources of the warehouse itself. DBT doesn't do any like resourcing or anything. It's basically just a compiler to say, do all of these actions right within the warehouse. Cool. Anything else?
That's it.
I would just say that their website has a ton of awesome free resources. So if what Jake and I shared is of interest and you want to dig into it deeper, definitely go check it out. And of course, you can always connect with either of us on LinkedIn or email us if you have other questions.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura and Jake.
Cool.
It was great.
Thanks.
All right, we'll open it up. Before this meeting started, I said I can't imagine anybody would be disappointed if we had a virtual meeting that finished early. And I stand by that point, but I'll open it. Any questions for Taimoor to answer? Any like Tableau doctor challenges you're facing in your organization? Any questions on Tableau at all? We've all been sitting at our computers for way too long and we're just happy to be done. I think might also be it's totally an acceptable answer. I go once. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Certainly reach out if you have any questions. Great presentations, fantastic meeting. We should do this again sometime. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Take care.
Scott.